Today, drills between the United States, South Korea, and Japan are underway in order to prevent a nuclear disaster. According to the U.S. military, these routine drills have been taking place for the past year. Many world leaders believe the nuclear threat from North Korea is growing and has reached a, quote, critical and imminent level. To discuss this further, I'm now joined by Peter Kuznick, professor of history and director of the Nuclear Studies Institute at American University, and co-author with Oliver Stone of, quote, The Untold History of the United States. Thanks for joining us, Peter. Now, Russia and even China have argued such drills should cease to exist as they may be provoking the North Korea nuclear threats. What do you say to this?
We know that the drills are viewed as being provocative by the North Koreans. This is the fifth set of joint U.S., Japanese, South Korean drills this year. That's in addition to the regular drills that the United States holds with South Korea. And the North sees some of these drills are decapitation drills to remove Kim Jong-un and take over the country. Some of them are to evacuate Americans in South Korea. This one is to detect and track missiles coming from North Korea. So they serve a variety of purposes, but the one thing they've all got in common is that they're all viewed as being very provocative by the North Korean government, because they know that the drills are intended to plan for possible implementation. So we've seen this happen elsewhere. They seem to be drills, they seem to be simply exercises, but they are also planning for action.
Peter, even if the U.S. saw these drills as provoking, do you think they would actually stop?
No, because what we have now is counter-provocation from both sides. You've got North Korean actions that are unacceptable. You've got them shooting missiles over Japan. You've got them testing intercontinental ballistic missiles. You've got them conducting a sixth nuclear test. These are all highly provocative, dangerous toward South Korea, the United States, Japan. And then Trump's response, though, is to escalate the rhetoric. So Kim Jong-un will call him a dotard, and he'll come back with something more insulting to Little Rocket Man. Now Kim Jong-un calls Trump a lunatic. I mean, this is not the way diplomacy should be conducted. In fact, it's the opposite of diplomacy. It's two young boys playing chicken with nuclear weapons, and they think that they can control it and it won't lead to war, but there's no guarantee. We've seen in the past that these kinds of provocations, this kind of rhetoric, this kind of threats and counter-threats and escalations and counter-escalations does often lead to war, and that's what everybody is terrified of. We don't know. See, one of the things that makes some of us concerned is Donald Trump might believe American rhetoric about the effectiveness of our missile program there, our anti-ballistic missiles, our THAAD missiles. Maybe he thinks that we can intercept the North Korean missiles. We can't. And there's no defense against North Korea's artillery that's trained on Seoul, a city of 25 million people in that area. So it's a very, very dangerous situation. If fighting breaks out there, it can quickly escalate to the loss of millions of people. We've got to sit down. We've got to do what China and Russia have been urging. Cut back on these military exercises. Sit down, start negotiating a freeze-for-freeze kind of solution.
And Peter, like you've been saying, this tit-for-tat that Trump and Kim Jong-un are going through, it's not going to prevent this nuclear disaster that the U.S. doesn't want to see. Now, Trump, he's going to be visiting Asia next month, and it's believed he will try to convince China to pressure North Korea into giving up its nuclear weapons program. How would Trump go about doing that?
Well, there's no love lost between China and North Korea. In fact, the leaders don't even speak to each other. And North Korea has done some things that are very hostile toward China. The uncle who Kim had assassinated was the main Chinese tie with the North Korean government. So clearly, but China does not want to see a unified Korean peninsula allied to the United States. So they're willing to go a certain degree in pushing Kim, but they don't have a lot of influence with Kim, and they are not willing to go far enough to topple the regime. So I don't think that Trump's solutions or his attempts are going to bear fruit. What Trump is going to have to realize is that diplomacy is the only way out. When he told Rex Tillerson, the Secretary of State, not to even bother trying diplomacy, that it was a waste of time, that's exactly the wrong message. Diplomacy, there is never a waste of time. That diplomacy is the only possible solution. And in diplomacy, the United States has to give as well as get what it wants. So we're going to have to compromise. That's not a word that Trump likes, but that's what's essential if we're going to come to a resolution of this crisis. And it is a real crisis, and it is a very dangerous one.
Peter, we're a little short on time. Trump is also slated to meet with world leaders during his visit to Asia in an attempt, obviously, to curb North Korea's nuclear weapons program. At best, what do you think will come out of this meeting?
I don't think very much. We know that he's going to be meeting and perhaps playing golf with Shinzo Abe, the Japanese prime minister. The elections that were just held in Japan are very, very disturbing. It's a triumph for the right wing there. It's a triumph for the militarists there. Abe might have the muscle he needs now to do away with Article 9, which is going to put Japan on a much more militaristic course. So you've got Trump and Abe aligning. Fortunately, the new president of South Korea, Moon Jae-in, is a reasonable person, and he keeps on saying that war is not an option, and we have to find diplomatic solutions, political solutions, and begin to improve relations between South Korea and North Korea. He's got a much better sense of what needs to be done than does either Trump or Abe.
Peter, we're going to leave it right there. Thank you so much for your insight. Peter Kuznick, professor of history and director of the Nuclear Studies Institute at American University. Thanks again.